Today, we're getting inside the mind of George Orwell. But we're not just going to talk about his famous novels. Nope. We're going to break down the actual system he developed to see the future with such terrifying clarity. A method we're calling the Orwell Equation. Okay, picture this. The year is 1949. George Orwell, his real name was Eric Blair, is sick, physically ailing, but he manages to publish his final, terrifying masterpiece, 1984. Now you gotta remember the mood back then. The Western world had just won World War II. People were feeling pretty optimistic about democracy. They saw a world of freedom, of progress, of rebuilding. But Orwell, he saw something else, something much, much darker. Through all that celebration, he saw the seeds of a new kind of tyranny being planted. One that didn't just want to control your body, but wanted to colonize your mind. So how did one guy see so clearly what an entire generation was missing? That's the big question we're here to answer.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at that incredible prophecy he laid out in 1949. Then we'll dig into how his worldview was literally forged in some really uncomfortable truths. Next, we'll define the heart of this explainer, the Orwell equation itself. From there, we'll see how he actually put that equation to work with a system for finding the truth. We'll explore his incredible legacy, how he basically invented the vocabulary of tyranny. And finally, we'll bring it all back to you and what this all means for your own intellectual independence today.
Right, so let's start with that one big idea that changed everything. This wasn't some lucky guess he made about the future. It was a conclusion he reached by looking at power in a whole new way, and it all came down to one defining realization. This right here, this is the key that unlocks all of it. Orwell's big breakthrough wasn't about politics in the usual sense. It wasn't about tanks or bombs or political parties. It was the chilling realization that the ultimate tool of control isn't a prison cell. It's the dictionary. He figured out that if power can corrupt language, it can corrupt thought itself. I mean, think about it. If you can twist the word freedom to mean slavery or justice to mean punishment, you can literally change what people believe is real. And for him, this became more than just an idea for a book. It became his life's mission, to expose how words were being turned into weapons and to arm the rest of us against it. But you don't just come up with an idea like that sitting in a comfortable armchair. It has to be earned. It has to be paid for with real, raw experience. Orwell's equation was forged in the fire of direct and often brutal observation. He basically built his entire worldview by systematically saying no to comfort and actively chasing the hard truths that most of us spend our lives trying to avoid. And just look at this timeline of his life. This isn't just a list of things that happened to him, it was a deliberate journey. As a young man, he completely rejected the class hypocrisy of his fancy education at Eton. He just couldn't stand the unearned authority and the sterile, detached way of looking at the world. Then, in the 20s and 30s, he does something truly radical. He chooses to be poor. He becomes a dishwasher in Paris, lives like a tramp in London, and he's not doing it for a story. He's doing it to truly understand. He knew that to really diagnose society's problems, you had to see things from the perspective of power's victims. And then came the ultimate test, the Spanish Civil War. He went there to fight for democracy, but instead he saw the cause betrayed from the inside by totalitarian communists. He watched with his own eyes as propaganda and lies were used to control their own allies. He saw history being rewritten in real time.
And that's the whole point, right? Every one of these experiences was a piece of data confirming the same harsh lesson. If you really want to see the world clearly, you can't do it from a safe, comfortable distance. You have to systematically, intentionally close that gap. You have to subject yourself to the raw, unfiltered, and deeply uncomfortable reality of people who are on the receiving end of power. This commitment to brutal experiential honesty is the bedrock of everything Orwell stood for.
Which brings us right to the heart of it all, the Orwell Equation. Now, this isn't just some catchy phrase we made up. We're talking about his whole philosophy as a structured, learnable system, a powerful formula he developed for seeing the gears of society turning long before anyone else even knew they were there. So let's ask that question again. In a world full of smart journalists and academics and politicians, how did this one man get so far ahead of the curve? How did he see the dangers that were coming? The answer is, he wasn't just looking at the world, he was running it through an equation. And here it is, The Orwell equation is built on this core belief. Political corruption is linguistic corruption. They aren't just related, they are the exact same thing, one and the same. So to see what's really going on politically, you have to stop thinking of language as just a way to communicate. You have to start seeing it for what it often is, a weapon, deliberately used by people in power to confuse, to mislead, and to make horrible things sound perfectly reasonable.
And the equation breaks down into these three core principles. First, the Linguistic Scrutiny Mandate. This just means you have to relentlessly, almost obsessively, inspect the language coming from power. You're constantly on the lookout for Newspeak, holding up what they say against what they actually do. Second, the Unsentimental Witness Doctrine. Now this one is crucial, and it's probably the hardest. It means you have to ditch all your own biases, your ideals, your loyalty to your side. You have to commit to ruthless honesty, especially when it tells you something you don't want to hear about your own team. That's what he learned the hard way in Spain. And third, the Fictional Projection Rule. Orwell knew just stating facts wasn't enough. You have to make people feel the danger. So he used the simple satire of Animal Farm and the sheer terror of 1984 to take these abstract threats like totalitarianism and propaganda and make them visceral, unforgettable, and impossible to ignore.
Okay, but a philosophy is pretty useless if you don't put it into practice, right? Orwell didn't just believe in this equation, he lived it. He built rigorous, systematic habits into his daily life that turned his powerful theory into a truth-generating machine. He basically had two core routines. First was the plain prose and clarity protocol. He was almost religious about writing in the simplest, most direct language possible. He would strip out all the jargon, all the vagueness. The second was the voluntary immersion and experiential audit. This was his habit of constantly testing his ideas against the real world, often in extreme situations. He was auditing his own thinking with his conscience. And these two routines worked together perfectly, making sure his analysis was both crystal clear and deeply connected to reality. And this slide is a perfect example of his plain prose protocol in action. Look at the left column. That's the language of bureaucracy, of power. It's designed to sound smart and sterile, to hide the raw reality of what's happening. Utilizing enhanced pacification protocols, it sounds so clean, so technical. But what does it mean? Using more soldiers to stop riots. That's the ugly truth. Or how about a strategic right-sizing initiative? Sounds like a smart business move. The plain English? Firing people to save money. That's the real human cost. Orwell's protocol was this constant act of translation. For him, using clear language wasn't just about good writing, it was a political act. Because he was so relentlessly committed to clarity and truth, Orwell's impact was just monumental. I mean, he didn't just write a couple of famous books, he gave the entire world a new language, a new toolkit for identifying and resisting oppression in the modern age. I mean, just take his most famous invention, Newspeak. He saw it as more than just dishonest jargon. It was a political project. The ultimate goal of Newspeak, he explained, is to literally narrow the range of human thought, to make certain ideas impossible to even think. The logic is chillingly simple. If you can get rid of the words for things like freedom, or rebellion, or critical thinking, you can eventually get rid of the concepts themselves. I mean, how can you fight for something if you don't even have a word for it? That insight alone was revolutionary. So his legacy is huge. He totally transformed how we even talk about politics. He turned dystopian fiction into a serious tool for political diagnosis. He made criticizing the language of politicians a mainstream, essential part of the conversation. He basically institutionalized the fight against euphemism, making all of us more suspicious of vague, comforting words from people in charge. And his own words, Orwellian, Big Brother, Thought Police, Newspeak, they became the global vocabulary for talking about modern tyranny. He literally gave us the language to name our fears. And if you need proof that his warnings are still relevant, just look at this. 1984 has been translated into over 100 languages. That's not just because it's a great story. It shows that his warnings are universal. The threats he saw, the corruption of language, mass surveillance, the rewriting of history, these aren't just about one country or one time. They hit home in every culture, in every political system all over the world, because they speak to a fundamental fight between power and truth. So what does this all mean for us, right now, today? This isn't just some interesting history lesson. The Orwell equation is a timeless survival kit for your mind, and using it in our world, which is just flooded with information and disinformation, is more urgent than ever. This is about protecting your own intellectual independence. So how do you actually do it? Here are 3 steps, a personal commitment to clarity you can make. First,
systematically audit your own language. Really pay attention to the buzzwords and jargon you hear and use every single day. Ask yourself, what does this actually mean? What truth is it trying to hide? Second, make a real conscious effort to cut out clichés and euphemisms from how you speak and write. Aim for directness and honesty, even when it's hard. And third, when you come across a complex issue, fight the urge to hide behind complicated jargon. Do the hard work of digging for the simple, concrete truth at the center of it. George Orwell built his entire legacy on one profound truth, that the control of society always begins with the corruption of language. He created the Orwell Equation as a blueprint to see society before it sees itself, all through a radical commitment to linguistic clarity and raw, experiential honesty. He proved that the disciplined daily defense of your words is the ultimate defense against power, because in the end, his whole life shows us that the integrity of your language is the ultimate measure of your intellectual independence.